The California sun beat down on Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton as Captain Jake Harrison stepped out of his air-conditioned SUV. He was in a good mood. He just returned from 2 weeks of leave, and his tan showed it. At 32, he was one of the youngest captains on base, and he never let anyone forget it. The parking lot outside the base gymnasium was crowded. Today was the quarterly combat fitness test for senior enlisted and officers. Harrison enjoyed these events. They were a chance to show off, to prove he still had what it took physically, even behind a desk. As he walked toward the entrance, he noticed a woman sitting on a bench near the door. She looked to be in her late 30s, maybe early 40s. She was small, maybe 5'4", with light brown hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her camouflage uniform was faded from many washings, and she wore it loose, almost drowning in the fabric. She had a plain face with weather-worn skin and crow's feet around her eyes. What caught Harrison's attention was that she appeared to be alone, sitting quietly with her hands folded in her lap. Most personnel were gathered in groups, talking and joking. This woman sat by herself, watching the activity with a calm, distant expression. Harrison's friends caught up with him, 2 other captains and a first lieutenant, all from the logistics division where Harrison worked. "Hey, Cap," one of them said, pointing toward the woman. "Looks like someone's lost." Harrison grinned. He was known for his sense of humor, though not everyone appreciated it. "Maybe she's waiting for her husband." The others laughed. The woman didn't seem to hear them, or if she did, she didn't react. Harrison felt bold. His good mood and his audience encouraged him. He walked over to the bench, his friends following. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his tone friendly but with an edge of condescension. "Can I help you find something? The commissary is on the other side of base. Exchange is down the road." The woman looked up at him. Her eyes were a pale gray like winter sky. She studied him for a moment before speaking. "I'm where I need to be," she said quietly. Her voice was rough, almost hoarse, like someone who'd spent years shouting over wind and gunfire. "Oh, you're here for the CFT?" Harrison asked, his eyebrows raised in exaggerated surprise. "That's great. We love when the admin staff comes out to support us." One of his friends snickered. The woman's expression didn't change. "I'm not admin staff." Harrison glanced at her uniform. There was no rank insignia visible on her collar. She wore a light jacket despite the heat, and it covered where her rank should be displayed. No name tape either. It was irregular, but there could be reasons. "Well," Harrison continued, enjoying himself now, "whatever you do, I'm sure it's important. Everyone plays their part right. The military needs people in all kinds of positions. Nothing wrong with supply or clerical work or—" "Captain Harrison." The voice came from behind him, sharp and commanding. Harrison turned to see Sergeant Major Rodriguez striding toward them. Rodriguez was a legend on base, 30 years in the Corps, a chest full of ribbons, and a reputation for not tolerating fools. "Sergeant Major," Harrison said, his confidence wavering slightly. Rodriguez's face was dark with anger. "Step away from the chief, right now." Harrison blinked. "The chief." "Force Recon Chief," Rodriguez said, his voice tight. "Step away." The words hit Harrison like cold water. Force Recon, the Marine Corps Elite Special Operations Unit, among the most highly trained warriors in the world. He looked back at the woman on the bench. She still sat calmly, her expression unchanged, but now Harrison noticed other things. The way she held herself, perfectly still but somehow coiled. The scars on her hands, the calluses visible even from a distance. The weathered skin that came not from age but from years in harsh climates. "Chief Kowalski," Rodriguez said, his tone completely different now, respectful, almost reverent. "I apologize for the interruption." The woman, Chief Kowalski, stood up slowly. As she did, she unzipped her jacket. Underneath, her uniform shirt bore the insignia of a Chief Warrant Officer 4. On her right shoulder was the patch of 1st Reconnaissance Battalion. On her left shoulder, where deployed service members wore their combat patch, was the same insignia. That meant she'd deployed with her unit, seen combat with them. But it was her chest that made Harrison's stomach drop. Rows of ribbons told a story he could barely comprehend. The Navy Cross, the second highest military decoration. The Silver Star, Bronze Star with Valor device. Purple Heart with 3 stars, meaning she'd been wounded 4 times. Combat Action Ribbon, multiple campaign medals from Iraq and Afghanistan. "Oh my God," Harrison whispered. Chief Kowalski looked at him with those pale gray eyes. When she spoke, Her rough voice was quiet but carried absolute authority. "For your information, Captain," she said, "I've been in the Marine Corps for 22 years. 18 of those years have been with force reconnaissance. I've completed more than 40 combat deployments. I've led teams in direct action raids, special reconnaissance, and advanced force operations. I've trained with British SAS, Navy SEALs, and Army Delta Force." Harrison felt his face burning red. His friends had backed away, trying to distance themselves. "I've been shot 4 times, as you can see from my Purple Hearts," she continued. "I've carried wounded Marines out of kill zones. I've made life-or-death decisions in situations you've only read about in books. And I've earned the respect of every operator I've ever worked with, regardless of their branch or their rank." She took a step closer to him. Even though she was almost a foot shorter, Harrison felt small. "What I do not need," she said, her voice dropping even lower, "is some desk officer half my age making assumptions about my capabilities based on my gender or my appearance." The parking lot had gone quiet. Personnel had stopped what they were doing to watch. In the military, word of something like this spread fast. Sergeant Major Rodriguez stepped forward. "Chief Kowalski is here as the senior evaluator for today's CFT. She'll be observing command staff to assess leadership capabilities under physical stress. It's part of a corps-wide evaluation program." Harrison felt like he might be sick. Not only had he insulted one of the most elite warriors in the Marine Corps, but she was here to evaluate officers. Officers like him. Chief Kowalski pulled a small notebook from her pocket and wrote something down. Harrison desperately wanted to know what she was writing, but he didn't dare ask. "Gentlemen," she said, addressing Harrison and his friends, "I suggest you go warm up for your CFT. I'll be watching carefully." It was a dismissal, clear and final. Harrison stumbled away, his friends following in silence. Behind him, he heard Sergeant Major Rodriguez speaking quietly to Chief Kowalski, apologizing again. He heard her rough voice respond, "It's fine, Sergeant Major. Nothing I haven't dealt with before." Those words somehow made it worse. This wasn't the first time she'd been disrespected. It probably wasn't even the 100th, and she handled it with more grace than Harrison could have managed. As he entered the gymnasium, Harrison realized that his good mood was gone. In its place was shame, hot and heavy in his chest. He had no idea that this was only the beginning, and that Chief Kowalski was about to teach him and everyone else on base a lesson they would never forget. The gymnasium was set up for the combat fitness test, a grueling evaluation that tested battle readiness through a timed 880-yard run, ammunition can lifts, and a combat maneuver course. Captain Harrison went through his warm-up routine mechanically, his mind still reeling from the encounter outside. Chief Kowalski entered the gym with Sergeant Major Rodriguez and 2 other senior enlisted Marines. She'd removed her jacket, and now her decorated uniform was fully visible. Harrison watched from across the gym as people noticed her, did double takes, and whispered to each other. A female Force Recon chief was rare enough. A female Force Recon chief with a Navy Cross was almost unheard of. Colonel Matthews, the base logistics commander and Harrison's ultimate boss, approached Chief Kowalski with his hand extended. They shook, and Harrison could see the colonel speaking with clear respect. Whatever Chief Kowalski was doing here, it had approval from the highest levels. The CFT began. Participants were divided into groups by age and gender. Harrison was in the male 30-35 group, generally the most competitive bracket. He usually scored near perfect, and he'd been planning to show off today. Now, he just wanted to get through it without further embarrassment. Chief Kowalski positioned herself at the maneuver course, the most challenging part of the CFT. This portion involved crawling, carrying ammunition cans, grenade throws, and sprinting, all designed to simulate combat conditions. She held her notebook and watched with those calm, assessing eyes. Harrison's group approached the course. His earlier bravado had infected his friends, and now they all looked nervous. One of the captains leaned over to Harrison. "You really stepped in it, man," he whispered. "Do you know what you have to do to earn a Navy Cross?" Harrison did know. The Navy Cross was awarded for extraordinary heroism in combat. You had to do something incredibly brave under enemy fire, something that saved lives at extreme risk to your own. And Chief Kowalski had one pinned to her chest. "Begin," the evaluator shouted. Harrison moved through the course, pushing himself hard. His lungs burned. His muscles screamed. But he drove forward, determined to at least prove he was physically capable, even if he'd been an idiot with his mouth. When he finished, gasping for breath, he saw Chief Kowalski make another note in her book. He had no idea if that was good or bad. After his group completed the course, there was a break while the next group prepared. Harrison grabbed water and found a spot against the wall, trying to be invisible. That's when he heard a lieutenant colonel speaking loudly near the equipment area. "I don't care what her ribbons say," the man was saying to a small group. "Force Recon is no place for women. It's basic biology. They're not built for it." Harrison's stomach clenched. The lieutenant colonel, a man named Peterson, was known for his old-school attitudes. He worked in a different division and had a reputation for being difficult. "Peterson, shut up," someone warned, but the lieutenant colonel waved them off. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking," Peterson continued. "She probably got those medals from some diversity program. You know how it is these days. Everyone gets a trophy, especially if you check the right boxes." The gymnasium had gone very quiet. Chief Kowalski was standing 15 feet away. She had clearly heard every word. She walked over to Peterson slowly, deliberately. The lieutenant colonel was a big man, well over 6 feet, muscular and imposing. Chief Kowalski looked tiny next to him. "Lieutenant Colonel Peterson," she said in that rough, quiet voice, "I couldn't help but overhear your comments." Peterson's face flushed, but he didn't back down. "Chief, I was just expressing an opinion. An opinion about my qualifications. An opinion about the physical standards required for special operations," Peterson said. "Nothing personal." Chief Kowalski nodded slowly. "I see. Tell me, Lieutenant Colonel, when was your last deployment?" Peterson shifted his weight. "I deployed to Kuwait in 2005. Kuwait Rear Echelon." "I was in logistics support," Peterson said defensively. "So you've never been in direct combat?" Chief Kowalski said. It wasn't a question. "That's not the point." "It's exactly the point," she interrupted, her voice still quiet but now with an edge like a knife. "You're making judgments about what it takes to succeed in Force Recon, but you've never been there. You've never done it. You've never carried a 90-pound pack through mountain terrain. You've never made a forced entry into a hostile building. You've never had to drag a wounded operator to safety while taking fire." Peterson's face was dark red now. "I've trained." "Training isn't combat," Chief Kowalski said. "Would you like to know how I earned my Navy Cross, Lieutenant Colonel?" The gymnasium was so silent that the ventilation system sounded loud. "My team was conducting reconnaissance in Helmand Province in 2011, she began, her rough voice carrying clearly. "We were 4 operators. We got compromised by a Taliban patrol and had to extract under fire. During the firefight, our team leader took rounds through both legs. Our communications specialist was hit in the shoulder." She paused, and Harrison saw something flicker in her eyes. Pain, memory, something deep. "I was the junior member of that team," she continued. "But I was the only one still mobile. We were 3 kilometers from our extraction point, surrounded by enemy combatants in terrain that gave them every advantage. I made a decision." Peterson stood silent, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. "I carried our team leader for the first kilometer," Chief Kowalski said. "Then I went back for the communications specialist while our 4th member held security. We moved through a canyon with enemy fighters above us on both ridges. I returned fire with one hand while dragging wounded Marines with the other. When we reached the extraction point, I held our position alone for 20 minutes while close air support cleared the area." She took a step closer to Peterson. 3 Marines survived that day because I didn't quit, because I was strong enough, smart enough, and tough enough to do what needed to be done. My gender had nothing to do with it. My heart did. My training did. My commitment to the people beside me did." Peterson looked down at his feet. "So when you say Force Recon is no place for women," Chief Kowalski said, "what you're really saying is that you can't imagine a woman being tougher than you. And Lieutenant Colonel, that says everything about your imagination and nothing about women's capabilities." She turned and walked away, leaving Peterson standing alone, humiliated. Colonel Matthews approached Peterson immediately. "My office, now." The colonel's voice was ice. Harrison watched them leave. He felt a strange mixture of emotions, relief that he wasn't the only one who'd screwed up today, but also a growing respect for Chief Kowalski that went beyond her ribbons and rank. She wasn't just tough, she was principled. She stood up for herself with facts and dignity, not anger or cruelty. The CFT continued, but the atmosphere had changed. People were quieter, more thoughtful. When they looked at Chief Kowalski, there was no more doubt in their eyes, only respect. And maybe a little bit of awe. That evening, Captain Harrison sat alone in his quarters, still in his workout clothes. The CFT had finished hours ago, but he couldn't bring himself to move on with his day. His laptop was open in front of him, and he'd been reading everything he could find about Force Reconnaissance and Chief Warrant Officer Kowalski. What he found was remarkable, though most of it was redacted or classified. Chief Warrant Officer for Sarah Kowalski had enlisted in the Marine Corps at age 18. She'd excelled in boot camp and infantry training, then volunteered for reconnaissance training when women were first allowed to attempt it. She was part of the first class that accepted female candidates. The articles Harrison found noted that out of 37 candidates in that class, only 4 graduated. Chief Kowalski was one of them, and the only woman. From there, her career had been extraordinary. She deployed more times than most operators did in their entire careers. She'd served in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and places that weren't named in any public records. She'd earned expert ratings in marksmanship, demolitions, and close-quarters combat. She'd attended Ranger School, Airborne School, and numerous other specialized training programs. Her Navy Cross citation was partially declassified. It confirmed the story she'd told in the gymnasium, but added details that made Harrison's blood run cold. She'd been wounded herself during that extraction, taken a round through her left arm, but hadn't reported it until all her team members were safe. She'd continued fighting and carrying wounded Marines with a bullet in her arm. Harrison closed his laptop and put his head in his hands. He thought about his own career. He'd been a good Marine, no question. He'd done his job well in the logistics field, but he'd never faced anything like what Chief Kowalski had faced. He'd never had to make those kinds of decisions, never had to demonstrate that kind of courage. And yet he dismissed her at first glance, assumed she was admin staff or someone's spouse, talked down to her like she was a civilian who'd wandered onto base by mistake. There was a knock at his door. Harrison opened it to find Sergeant Major Rodriguez standing in the corridor. "Sergeant Major," Harrison said, snapping to a more respectful posture. "At ease, Captain. This isn't official. May I come in?" Harrison stepped aside. Rodriguez entered and remained standing. "I'm going to tell you something," Rodriguez said without preamble. "Chief Kowalski submitted her evaluation notes today. Colonel Matthews asked me to review them before they go up the chain." Harrison's stomach dropped. "I understand, Sergeant Major." "Do you? Because her notes about you were interesting." Harrison waited, barely breathing. "She noted that you showed strong physical performance on the CFT," Rodriguez continued. "She noted that you appeared to take the test seriously and gave full effort. She noted that your team members looked to you for packing and encouragement during the maneuver course." Harrison blinked in surprise. Those were positive observations. "She also noted," Rodriguez said, his voice hardening, "that you demonstrated poor judgment and prejudice based on appearance, that you made assumptions without gathering information, that you attempted to embarrass someone in front of others without knowing their background or circumstances." There it was, the hammer falling. "However," Rodriguez continued, "she concluded her notes by saying that you appeared genuinely embarrassed by your mistake and that your subsequent behavior showed signs of self-reflection. She recommended that instead of formal discipline, you be assigned to a professional development program focused on leadership and respect." Harrison looked up. What? "She's giving you a chance, Captain. More than you deserve, in my opinion, but Chief Kowalski has a reputation for seeing potential in people even when they screw up." Rodriguez moved toward the door, then turned back. "She's leading a training seminar tomorrow at 600, Leadership in Combat Environments. It's normally reserved for special operations candidates, but she's opened 3 slots to junior officers on base who could benefit from the perspective. Colonel Matthews is assigning you to one of those slots." "Yes, Sergeant Major," Harrison said. "Don't waste this opportunity," Rodriguez said. "Most people don't get a second chance after what you pulled. Chief Kowalski is giving you one. I suggest you take it seriously." After Rodriguez left, Harrison sat down heavily on his bunk. He felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: humility, real, deep humility. The next morning, Harrison arrived at the training building at 5:45, 15 minutes early. Two other officers were already there, a first lieutenant and another captain, both looking nervous. Harrison recognized them from the gymnasium. They'd been among the ones who heard Lieutenant Colonel Peterson's comments. At precisely 600, Chief Kowalski entered. She was in standard camouflage utilities, no jacket this time, her ribbons clearly visible. She carried a worn backpack and a tablet. "Good morning," she said in her rough voice. "Thank you for being on time. Let's begin." She set up a presentation on the screen at the front of the room. The first slide showed a photograph of a young Marine, barely 20 years old, in combat gear. "This is Corporal Michael Chen," Chief Kowalski said. "He was on my team during a deployment in 2009. Smart kid, good shooter, fast learner. He was also terrified of heights." She clicked to the next slide, showing mountainous terrain. "Our mission required rappelling down a cliff face to reach an observation point. Corporal Chen was shaking so hard I could hear his equipment rattling. He told me he couldn't do it, asked if there was another way." Chief Kowalski looked at the three officers. "What would you do in that situation?" The first lieutenant spoke up hesitantly. "Tell him he has to do it, that it's part of the mission." "You could do that," Chief Kowalski acknowledged. "What else?" Harrison thought about it. "You could rappel down first, show him it's safe." Chief Kowalski nodded. "I did that. I went first, talked him through every step over the radio, and waited at the bottom. Corporal Chen made it down. Took him 20 minutes for a rappel that should have taken 3, but he made it." She clicked to the next slide, showing the same young Marine, older now, with sergeant stripes. 4 years later, Sergeant Chen saved my life. We were pinned down in a building. The only way out was through a window onto a fire escape, 3 stories up. I'd taken shrapnel to my leg and couldn't move well. Chen didn't hesitate. He got me to that window, helped me through, and covered our retreat down that fire escape despite his fear of heights. She looked at the officers with those pale gray eyes. "Leadership isn't about being the toughest or the strongest or the loudest," she said. "It's about seeing people, really seeing them, and helping them be their best. It's about meeting people where they are and bringing them forward. It's about understanding that everyone has value, even if it's not immediately obvious." Harrison felt the words land on him like physical weight. The seminar continued for 4 hours. Chief Kowalski shared stories from her deployments, but they weren't war stories meant to impress. They were lessons. Each one illustrated a point about leadership, judgment, teamwork, or courage. She talked about the time she'd been wrong about an intelligence assessment and how admitting her mistake saved the mission. She talked about the operator who seemed lazy but turned out to have an undiagnosed medical condition. She talked about learning to listen more than she spoke, to observe before acting, to respect before judging. As the seminar ended, Chief Kowalski asked the 3 officers to stay for a moment. "I want to talk to each of you individually," she said. "It'll be brief." She spoke with the first lieutenant first, then the other captain. Both conversations lasted only a few minutes, then it was Harrison's turn. They sat across from each other at a small table. Chief Kowalski studied him for a moment before speaking. "Why did you do it, Captain Harrison?" she asked quietly. "Yesterday in the parking lot, why did you assume I was someone's spouse or admin staff?" Harrison had been dreading this question, but he'd also been preparing his answer. He owed her honesty. "Because you're a woman," he said, "and because you're small, and because," he took a breath, "because I've spent my entire career in an environment where most of the senior operators are men who look a certain way. I made an assumption based on pattern recognition, and I didn't even realize I was doing it." Chief Kowalski nodded. "That's honest. Do you understand why that's a problem?" "Yes, ma'am, because pattern recognition without conscious thought is just prejudice. And because I dismissed someone who could have been valuable, or in this case, who is valuable, without giving them a chance." "Good," she said. "Now tell me what you're going to do differently." Harrison had thought about this too. "I'm going to pause before I make assumptions. I'm going to ask questions instead of jumping to conclusions. I'm going to remember that people's capabilities can't be determined by their appearance." Chief Kowalski pulled out her worn notebook and wrote something. Then she tore out the page and slid it across the table. It was a name and email address. "This is a colleague of mine," she said. "He runs leadership development programs for junior officers across multiple bases. I've recommended you for his next cohort. It's a 6-month program, 1 weekend per month, focused on becoming a better leader. Harrison looked at the paper, then at her. After what I did, you're recommending me. I'm recommending that you continue the growth you've already started, Chief Kowalski said. Captain Harrison, I've dealt with 2 types of people who disrespect me. The first type does it and doesn't care. They're comfortable with their prejudices and have no intention of changing. Those people are a lost cause. She leaned forward slightly. The second type does it and feels genuine shame when they realize what they've done. Those people can change. They can become better. I think you're the second type. Harrison felt his throat tighten with emotion. Thank you, Chief. I don't deserve your help, but I'm grateful for it. You're right, you don't deserve it. But I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for all the people you'll lead in the future. If you become a better officer, a more aware leader, you'll make the Corps better. That's worth investing in. She stood up, and Harrison stood with her. Can I ask you something, Chief? Harrison said. Go ahead. How do you do it? Deal with the disrespect, the assumptions, the comments like what Peterson said. How do you not let it make you angry or bitter? Chief Kowalski smiled slightly, and it transformed her weathered face into something almost gentle. Who says I don't get angry? She replied. I get furious sometimes, but I learned a long time ago that anger without purpose is just noise, so I channel it. I let it fuel me to be better, to prove the doubters wrong, to open doors for the women coming after me. She picked up her backpack. Every time someone underestimates me and I prove them wrong, I make it a little easier for the next woman who wants to serve in Force Recon. Every time I handle disrespect with professionalism instead of emotion, I demonstrate that women belong in these roles. It's exhausting sometimes, but it's worth it. Harrison nodded, understanding dawning. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for everyone who came after her. Thank you for the lesson, Chief, he said. All of them. You're welcome. Now get back to your unit and be a better officer. 2 months later, Harrison was working late in his office when he received an email. It was from Colonel Matthews, his commanding officer. The subject line read, Opportunity. Harrison opened it and read, Captain Harrison, Chief Warrant Officer Kowalski has been assigned to develop a new cross-training program between logistics units and special operations forces. The goal is to improve understanding and coordination between combat and support elements. She has requested you as her logistics liaison for the program. This is a significant professional opportunity and would involve working closely with Force Recon operators over the next year. I've approved the assignment if you're willing to accept. Let me know by end of business tomorrow. Colonel Matthews. Harrison sat back in his chair, stunned. Chief Kowalski was giving him another chance, another opportunity to learn and grow. He typed his response immediately. Sir, I accept with gratitude. 1 year later, Captain Harrison stood in front of a classroom full of young Marines, preparing to teach a class on leadership and respect. It was part of the cross-training program he'd helped develop with Chief Kowalski. Before the students arrived, he set up a slide at the beginning of his presentation. It showed a photograph of Chief Kowalski in full combat gear, standing with her Force Recon team in some dusty, foreign location. When the Marines filed in and took their seats, Harrison began his presentation. Before we start today's lesson, he said, I want to tell you about a mistake I made. It's embarrassing and it doesn't make me look good, but it taught me something important. He told them the story, all of it, how he dismissed Chief Kowalski based on her appearance, how he talked down to one of the most elite warriors in the Marine Corps, how his assumptions had blinded him to the truth standing right in front of him. The young Marines listened intently, some with wide eyes. The lesson here, Harrison said, is that your first impression of someone is often wrong, that the most capable person in the room might not look like what you expect. That respect should be your default, not something people have to earn from you. He clicked to the next slide, showing Chief Kowalski's ribbons in detail. Chief Warrant Officer Kowalski could have ended my career with one report. Instead, she gave me a chance to learn and grow. She saw potential in me even after I'd shown her disrespect. That's leadership, that's grace, and that's what we should all aspire to. After the class, a young female corporal approached him hesitantly. Sir, she said, I've been thinking about trying out for Force Recon, but I'm worried that I won't be taken seriously. Harrison smiled. Corporal, I'm going to give you Chief Kowalski's email address. She mentors female Marines who are interested in special operations. I guarantee she'll take you seriously. The corporal's face lit up. Really? Thank you, sir. As she walked away, Harrison felt something he hadn't expected, pride. Not in himself, but in being part of something larger. Part of a corps that was slowly, sometimes painfully, becoming more inclusive and more aware. His phone buzzed. A text message from Chief Kowalski. Heard your class went well today. Keep teaching those lessons. Keep making the corps better. Proud of your progress. Harrison smiled and typed back, Thank you, Chief, for everything. Her response came quickly. Thank you for being willing to learn. That's all any of us can do. 3 months after that, Harrison was promoted to major. At his promotion ceremony, several senior officers attended, including Colonel Matthews. Also attending, to Harrison's surprise and honor, was Chief Warrant Officer Kowalski. After the ceremony, as people mingled over coffee and cake, she approached him. Congratulations, Major, she said, extending her hand. He shook it firmly. Thank you for coming, Chief. It means a lot. I wanted to tell you something, she said. That young corporal you referred to me, she just passed the initial screening for Force Recon training. She's going to try out for the next class. Harrison grinned. That's outstanding. She told me you were the one who encouraged her, who told her she belonged there. Chief Kowalski smiled. That's what good leaders do. They lift others up. They open doors. They make people believe in themselves. I learned from the best, Harrison said. Chief Kowalski's expression became more serious. You know, Major, when we first met, I was angry, not just at you, but at what you represented, the casual dismissal that women in the military face every day. I was tired of it. I don't blame you, Harrison said quietly. But then I realized something, she continued. You can't change people by humiliating them. You can only change them by showing them a better way, by giving them a reason to want to be better. So that's what I tried to do with you. She looked at him with those steady gray eyes. And you know what? It worked. You became one of the best advocates for inclusive leadership on this base. You've mentored female Marines, challenged other officers' assumptions, and made the Corps a better place. That's more than I could have hoped for. Harrison felt emotion welling up. Chief, I was an arrogant idiot who needed to be taken down several pegs. You were an officer who had never been challenged to think differently, she corrected. There's a difference, and the fact that you were willing to learn, willing to change, that's what separates good Marines from great ones. She patted his shoulder. Keep doing what you're doing, Major. Keep learning, keep growing, keep lifting others up. That's how we build a Corps that's worthy of the people who serve in it. Yes, ma'am, Harrison said. I will. As Chief Kowalski walked away, Harrison watched her go. This small, weathered woman who had survived more combat than most Marines could imagine, who had broken barriers and opened doors, who had taken a foolish captain and turned him into a better officer through patience and wisdom. She had taught him that strength wasn't about size or volume or intimidation. It was about character, courage, conviction, and the quiet confidence to stand firm in the face of doubt and disrespect. She had taught him that real leadership meant seeing people's potential and helping them reach it, even when they didn't deserve your help. Most of all, she had taught him that the measure of a person wasn't what they looked like or what assumptions others made about them. It was what they did when tested, how they treated others, and whether they left the world better than they found it. Major Jake Harrison returned to the celebration, but his mind was already on tomorrow, on the next Marine he could mentor, the next officer he could challenge to think differently, the next door he could help open. Chief Kowalski had given him a gift, not forgiveness but opportunity, the opportunity to be better. And he intended to spend the rest of his career making sure that gift wasn't wasted.